Welcome to another episode of Once Upon a Time in the Movies. My name is Osnar, I'm a film critic and writer, and today we are going to talk about Autos, Mota y Rocanrol, which is a Mexican movie which was translated to Rock with and Wheels, and it was an amazing surprise, and I really wanted to recommend it. The first of this movie, we need to know the context of it, that it is a Mexican movie which is about Avándaro. If you don't, Avándaro is the equivalent of Woodstock to Mexico. It's a rock festival that was massive, got out of control. In the 60s, it got out of control. Okay, to understanding the movie, we need to know the context. Firstly, this movie is about Avándaro. It is Avándaro it is the equivalent of Woodstock here in Mexico. It is movie. Avándaro was this massive in the 70s. This massive rock festival with a lot of rock and Chicano, Spanish and Chicanos bands that were playing, and it was this big experience, especially because it was pretty recent when in Mexico have happened as a tragedy like Tlatelolco, where some students were murdered, so it was a really tense and oppressive situation in the country. And in this movie, and in Avándaro was like a escape valve, but it became widely known for being irreverent, for being nudity, for having a lot of addicts and drugs, and you know the drill, how it's with rock music. And so what I believe it is the most interesting thing about this is that it's a Mexican movie which is made in a very particular spot for Mexican cinema today. Today in Mexico, there are produced mainly two types of films, which is the romantic comedy, the rom-com, mostly remade without permission from other countries, and the second one is the slow artistical or supposedly artistical movies where nothing happens and characters just suffer for 2 hours, and that's pretty much Mexican filmmaking. And instead of going that way, Autos, Mota y Rocanrol decides to go to some sort of mixture. It is a comedy movie, but it's not a rom-com, and even when it is not trying to appear artistical and like elevated art, it has some cinematical competences that make it a great film and something that you enjoy seeing and that is worth seeing. In its genre and style, it is a comedy, but it is told as a mockumentary, a false documentary, where the story is told through the devices, the camera and the microphones used by filmmakers that are trying to record how they managed to pull out Avándaro, which were paid by the ones who were doing Avándaro. So in that sense, it is a meta-narrative experience where you are watching the filmmakers talk with the main characters, which are the protagonists, but the filmmakers are also part of the story, and you get the kind of jokes like the characters knowing that are filmed and acting different, which is different to how most movies are portrayed, where the camera is not there and the characters aren't aware that it's a movie. Here it's the opposite, and the movie uses this to bring comedy into the mix, which is, and also it is not a rom-com as usual Mexican movies are, but it is like a bro movie, like a bromance more than a romance. The movie is focused on the relationship between the two main characters, and it reminds me, and it's more reminiscent of movies of the New American Comedy of the beginning of the century and 2010s, things like Superbad or American Pie. Those sort of things is more in line with those. Okay, the beginning of the movie. The movie begins right on point. It is the filmmakers recording the main character who is describing what this movie is about, what they are planning to do, that he's in an office, he presenting both of the characters and its relationship through photographs, through archive material that of course is fake, but like pretending they have history together. And so it is a very simple or easy but effective scene, an effective way to start the film. It gives you the tone, it gives you the part and the conventions that the movie is going to be working, how the filmmakers are going to interact, what kind of humor is it going to make, and how the humor is influenced by the filmmakers being active in the making of this role, how the characters are aware that there's a camera recording them, how sometimes the comedy comes out of the characters saying something absurd or inappropriate where they shouldn't, and everything is presented in this beginning scene, and it also establishes the main characters and their strong relationship, so it becomes a very effective way to start the movie, and right now you know exactly what you're up to, and you can just start the movie. Regarding to the image of the movie, it's as you might expect, it's trying to appear to be shot in the 60s or 70s, late 60s, early 70s, where it is the aspect ratio is almost a square-like, like if it was filmed with a 8 or 68 millimeters camera. There is a lot of grain, there is a lot of sound, some lights are overexposed, it's not like completely well exposed because it is very difficult to have that done at the moment during a documentary. Also, the movie mixes this with true archive material, mainly from the news, the papers, the news, and the images really shot at the real Abandero, and it mixes and puts it in between here, so it makes it feel like this. So it is trying to emulate that style, and it makes it feel like more easily to your brain to convince yourself that you are really watching something that was shot at that time, because the image is mixed with true images of Abandero, and I must say that it is something that should be recognized, that the filmmakers managed to get all this archive, and it really benefits the movie and makes it feel in a grandiose and big scale that maybe without these images wouldn't have been possible. Also, in some moments it includes black and white scenes or black and white shots, and most of the time I don't quite like black and white because it makes the movie lose a lot of its color, which is for me something that I believe can transmit things, but in this movie it works fine because it just doesn't feel like this artistically or elitist this decision or signature to make the movie more artistically important or more avant-garde or whatever, but it is used inside the story to make jokes for comical reasons and for narrative reasons. There are reasons why there are black and white scenes, and when they appear they have a purpose, and maybe even funny things and parody the same feeling I have about using black and white just to gain recognition, but in the movie it's because they don't have money or they want exactly to get this artistical recognition, and so it is pretty funny and it's well integrated into the story. Also, the sound is mostly tragic. Yes, there are some music. There is a weed trip character scene, but other than that, everything is pretty intratragic, and the sound always keeps on this, and of course it makes some deliberate choices. For example, in Abandero, the music of course was so loud and people were screaming that you wouldn't be able to understand a conversation, and here they are in the middle of the concert and you can perfectly hear a conversation of people not even yelling, just talking normal. So there is this there are these kind of little or well, not really little, but this kind of artistical liberties or aesthetical liberties that the filmmakers took to be able to make this work as a movie and being able to be understood instead of appealing to realism, which is something that I also like about this movie, that it doesn't want to be realistic, which is other thing that tends to drag some of the more artistical or supposedly artistical Mexican movies that are done today. The montage and editing, it is fast. It is fast, paced, dynamic. It is always cutting. It uses all kind of cuts, direct cuts, and sometimes it uses J and L cuts to make it to make jokes, which works really well. For example, at the beginning, one character is talking about his car, and we are watching the character of the previous scene, and we are already hearing the character of the next scene talking about its car, and it's describing this amazing car. And when we cut to that scene, we see that he was talking about a toy car, not an actual car. And the movie uses this kind of cuts not only to make it more dynamic, but also to add some jokes and play with your expectations. Also, the movie goes for and really takes advantages of all the montage and editing resources that it has available. It includes dividing the screen and showing two scenes at the same time, which here works really well because there is this montage of them making calls, and while one character is is hearing the response from the other side, the other character is speaking, and they are not in the same conversation. They are both having each own conversation, and what this manages to make you feel is like you are at the same time watching these two scenes about two different things take or occur at the same time, and yet it feels realistic, and it doesn't feel like it breaks the verisimilitude of it being an actually documentary, or that characters are really acting out of what you will normally expect in a documentary. And so that divided screen where the characters each has its own conversation and you hear one in between the other, it was really well achieved, as well as also using black screen where there's nothing but the sound to just transmit or say jokes. It's also a very good, and I wouldn't say good, sorry, more like a very intelligent resource to get the scenes and jokes working that normally you wouldn't be able to get. Also, but I believe that at the end of it, everything and the most important thing is the drama and the characters. I will say that it is that the secondary characters are pretty much forgettable. They have almost most of them have some little quirk or something to make you recognize them immediately, but most of them are pretty forgettable. And I believe that the movie takes advantage of most of the characters being Mexican people, very important, so that only by showing the name in the screen as a documentary would, it brings some gravitas to the events and what's happening. It appears a couple of very important programmers and producers of Mexican television when they were starting. Also, there appears an Mexican ex-president from the 2000s, Vicente Fox, as a publicist in Coca-Cola, which was a real job, and it was involved in Avandaro, and so it adds these small details, and of course it is a parody of how the president talked, and I hope he didn't do it when he was marketing, but it is really funny when you get those references. And so I believe that in that case the movie manages to have the secondary characters just exist by themselves, and having for example other two radio locutors that describe the movie are two famous stand-up comedians from today, and so it manages to have in character and actors who are important to Mexican culture to carry these characters. And this allows the movie to focus on the two main characters, and this manages to help the movie focus on the two main characters, which are the ones who are carrying the movie, have the emotional baggage, and it's their fights and their confrontations which make this movie interesting. And and it is really interesting that they have two different perspectives on what they are doing, and as the movie goes on, this perspective become more strong and more opposing to each other. So at the end, these characters end up almost antagonizing themselves, and so even when the movie has like more clear antagonist as El Brujo, one musician that didn't want to go to Avandaro, as well as this supporting or this mentor-like character who works as a musical producer. At the end, what works is not having them supporting each other or fighting each other. It's the characters, the two main characters. When one is all focused on the racing and the cars, and the other one is focused on the music, they are the ones who carry the conflict and the scenes and almost the whole movie. Also, on regarding the plot and the storytelling of this movie, it is pretty straightforward. Almost everything is in chronological order, and what is most recognizable of it, I will say, is that some scenes are just there to make jokes or develop characters but not advance the plot. They are still quite funny and enjoyable, but the plot is so straightforward and simple that it isn't what is carrying the movie, and it is just mainly a gimmick or even a pretext to have this story happening, yet at the same time it is so simple that gives the characters a main objective and something that needs to achieve at a certain point, and so it keeps you engaged, and it is a very smart use of a simple plot in a character-driven movie. Also, what it is really important to mention is that regarding the intertextuality, the reference to other movies, the movie, of course, is drinking and and almost stealing a lot of the Woodstock documentary to make it. For example, the way the titles appear, where the music is changed, where the music's performed, the divided the screen to show the concert from different perspectives in the same screen. Also, the interviews with the people on the field or listening to the music, asking them how they got there, how they are planning to return, how they are interacting with each other. All of that, it is replicated in this film, and it does feel like a Mexican almost parody of that documentary, and this helps because this makes really easy to, I admit, to maybe not Mexican audiences to understand that this is a Mexican Woodstock, that this is the equivalent of Woodstock, and makes you understand the importance and the dynamics and the way that this particular event worked and was and came to be, and it becomes really clear because it is dragging and taking the vocabulary created to present it from an already iconic movie. And also this helps that fans from rock and Woodstock and this kind of movement get this trigger response because they are watching the movie constantly reference this other movie that was made specifically for them. So it is speaking the same language, or it is yes, it is specifically talking in a way that you as a Woodstock fan would understand it. Also, another important thing of the movie is the ideology. Of course, it presents the rock as a movement, the hippie as a calmed, we are all friends together movement, and that it is a very powerful thing. But at the end, the movie is not about rock or Woodstock or this movement or drugs or whatever. The movie is always about the characters and the two main characters, how they have to act and how they have to reconcile themselves. And the movie says that at the end, the movie is saying that even when they have to pay all that they go through, the important wasn't to make this Mexican Woodstock possible, wasn't to make this Avandaro concert something possible and big and that they are in history. The important was their friendship and that they managed to overcome it and remain friends, and remain friends even after this event almost broke their friendship. Also, in the ending, it is I like it, and that even when it is a comedy, and clearly it's a comedy, it runs away from the idea of everything resolving and everyone happy at the end. The characters here must pay for their actions, and one gets almost exiliated, and the other one is forced to do what he didn't want to do at the beginning of the movie. So it is a very interesting way to give not a bittersweet ending, and also, as it is pretending to be a documentary, it ends with the title cards of the characters and what they did after the events of the movie, recalling their future and whatever. And it is some of these asseverations are obviously false, ridicule, and almost a joke. So it becomes practically a joke, and it ends this movie like still being a documentary, but never losing the irreverent and joking style that the movie was going for. And so I will say at the end, and even one of the main characters, it's a producer of this movie, and I really a big shout out to him for being able and being willing to expose himself in that way and present his character as a flawed character and as almost a ignorant or a junior character, and it really worked very well. So in conclusion, this is a solid movie. It is cinematographically competent. It is very well done, which is surprising for these kind of movies, and is something that I believe most people won't recognize because it is not presented or is not sent to be trying to win awards. It has an emotional center, an emotional core, and everything works around it. So you are personally and emotionally invested in this movie. And even through all of this, it never stops being funny or entertaining. And so it is a really enjoyable experience at the theater. Also, if you love, especially Chicano and Rocanrol, and you know some of these bands as The Tree or the Duk Duks, this movie, you're going to love it. You see them in the big screen in part of a movie, and it is. And as a rock lover, you are going to love the music and love the vibe of the movie. And finally, it still manages to keep and feel like a truly Mexican movie with Mexican culture all throughout, with Mexican phrases and everything. But at the same time, it never feels like it is so dependent on being Mexican characters for it to not work with another audiences of other countries or whatever. So I do believe that even when as a Mexican, it is pretty cool and amazing to see all this part of your culture reflected in the movie. It is a movie made for everyone, and it doesn't require you to be of a certain nationality or to have a deep understanding of the culture. And so I believe that it is a very weird movie in the case that it manages to have a broad appeal at the same time that it does manage to not try to be a neutral movie. It embraces itself, and it does ends up having a really solid product at the end. If you like to, and that's all for this week, if you like to support me, please check my short story, Give Me a Hand. It is about a man who can attach dead limbs to his body to use as its own, and right now has to find his hand and in order to protect his identity. You can find it on Amazon, both in English and Spanish, or you can read it for free. Subscribe to my newsletter. All the information is in the description below. And until the next time, remember to keep enjoying the movies.